You're listening to an episode recorded during the time Innovation Fuel was part of University Canada West. We are proud and grateful for the work we've done together, and we want to thank the university for being in our podcast. We are now excited to continue the journey of Innovation Fuel into its next chapter. Thanks for listening.
Got an idea that keeps you up at night? Or one that makes people say, that will never work?
Perfect. That's what we talk about here on Innovation Fuel. So let's get that conversation started. Today on Innovation Fuel, we're joined by our good friend, Gary Wilson, the CEO of Tiicma Enterprises. Gary has dedicated his career to creating sustainable, community-driven economies for Indigenous communities and beyond. We'll explore how his leadership, vision, collaborative approach, and commitment to values based around innovation and are shaping the future of Indigenous entrepreneurship. Gary, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yayaksika, thank you. Before I get started, discuss some of the things you guys would like to discuss that we're doing, exciting stuff we're doing. I also want to acknowledge, in my language, Haistjok. Although I work for the Cayuga Checklisted, I am not a member of the nation, but I come to them in support of their endeavors from the community of the Haistjok of Bella Bella. My traditional name is Kanis Lagilis du Tlalis. Kayaksika Wakayakskan Kishakela Laktamau Kukula, the Lakwatich peoples, for allowing me to do business on their territory here, also known as Campbell River, where I'm currently at. And I also want to acknowledge my ancestors, my elders, our chiefs, my relatives, and the children and those yet to be born. And I'll also express by saying that when I acknowledge myself as Haistjok, I am also essentially practicing our laws as a Haistjok person. Our ancestors were quite brilliant in that Haistjok means to act and speak correctly. So when I say Haistjok, I'm not only suggesting where I'm from, but I'm also reminding myself that I should act and speak correctly in good spirits. And so with that, I appreciate being here and look forward to the conversation.
Gary, take us a little on the journey. You said Campbell River, you said Tiicma. Tell us a little bit more about Tiicma Enterprises, Campbell River, and what you're doing.
I'll clarify. Cayuga Checklisted is actually not part of the Campbell River. We're guests. We're honored to be here on their lands. However, we have an office that we purchased recently for the Cayuga Checklisted government, as well as Tiicma Enterprises and a couple of other tenants. But the reason why we have an office here is because there's a number of citizens from Cayuga Checklisted, 200 or more that live here. Therefore, they made a decision to, have a satellite government office, a treaty office here, as well as we made the choice to put our Tiicma Enterprise office here because it's a central location. It's an urban area. It allows us to do business, obviously, either on behalf of the community and in this region and beyond. So Cayuga Checklisted, just to kind of clarify again, is in the northwest coast of Vancouver Island. It's about a 3 to 3.5 hour drive from this office to Fair Harbor, which is one of the assets, the properties that we manage. Which is part of their treaty settlement lands. And then we have to take another 30 to 40-minute boat ride from there to the community of Hoopchitas. So it's quite remote, but it's a beautiful part of the world, and there's significant opportunities for the nation in terms of, leveraging the natural capital that is part of their territory.
So can you a little bit explain about the ecosystem there and also the economic developments and different businesses? We want to have a view about it.
It's quite remote, and the community itself is about just a little under 200 people living there, and they have a number of infrastructure challenges there. Like they only have single-phase power, and so there's a challenge with that, and therefore can only build so much infrastructure like housing and commercial development. And so there's a number of limitations as a consequence of that. But having said that, there are significant opportunities and the silver lining and all of that too for the nation in terms of looking ahead of what kind of developments can we engage in, like clean energy or net zero waste development or forestry and aquaculture and fisheries and tourism and hospitality, right? So we have Tiicma means heart in Yachalna, and our slogan is businesses with heart. And so a lot of what we do is really around based on the values, principles, and laws of the nation of Cayuga Checklisted. And we are held to a standard based on those values and the principles like Isak. Isak means respect in their language. And that's one of the principles that we perform our businesses with in mind all the time. But in terms of the kinds of businesses, as I mentioned, we have Tiicma Hospitality, of which we have Fair Harbor Marine and Campground. We have Walters Cove Resort, which is a sports fishing lodge. We have West Coast Expedition, which is a kayaking expedition facility on Spring Island that we invested in a couple of years ago. We have Hoopshatas Village Suites, which is the motel in the community, support the needs of those who go there to either visit or they're from government or industry. And then we also have Tiicma Fisheries, which includes fisheries and aquaculture, and Tiicma Property Services, which essentially is to manage properties that are in community, whether they're teachridges or whether they're, assets that the nation bought, like Cougar Lodge, or whether it's this building we're in today in Campbell River, which we purchased most recently. And on Tiicma Forestry, we recently bought 104,000 cubic meters of timber rights in the territory from Interfor, and negotiated that and closed that last year in July. So we've taken a lot of steps to create a foundation to lever the natural capital of the territory, to unlock that wealth and prosperity, and moving away from managing poverty to managing prosperity. And then utilizing a lot of the capital we gain from that to reinvest in community and culture and language and in place and restoring of some of the natural capital, because there is some challenges from industrial development over the years, like the depletion of salmon and herring. And so, of course, we're going to hopefully support the nation with our revenues and our profits to help them and support them in their efforts to restore the territory again and build wealth back into the territory. And wealth is much different to us. Wealth is not just about the most amount of money in your bank account. It's not about corporate competitive spirit of stepping on others to get ahead. It's more about how do we create a balance between sharing and spreading the wealth amongst not only the citizens and others in the territory, but also with those that don't have a voice, like the winged ones, the finned ones, the four-legged ones. It is our innate responsibility to make sure that the ecosystem and the biodiversity is rich and healthy again. So that's really the intent of economic development from a community perspective, from a First Nations community perspective, and a treaty nation for that matter.
Gary, you and I have talked before, and you've mentioned the element of creating the generational wealth, giving back to future generations. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and expand around what you mean by that generational wealth?
For example, when we purchased the forestry tenure, we have a different view of that investment. It's an investment for intergenerational wealth, and because we're not doing it like a typical corporation where it's quarter by quarter and your typical balance sheet matrix. We use different metrics, but it's about how do we get those returns, the non-monetary returns, and make sure that the citizens that currently enjoy the territory, live in the community, and those that don't live in the community to benefit from that investment, whether it's in, again, language revitalization, to training and development, to direct and indirect jobs, and ensuring that it sustains the community and supports the community, whether it's from an economic development, social, to health, to education, all of those things that a nation needs resources like capital to achieve. Again, we don't look quarter by quarter. We look many generations, 7 generations, to ensure that this investment will support those yet to be born and that can benefit from this investment. It's previously, like forestry companies that had a significant negative impact on the land, had just taken all of the profits they've garnered from the benefits of all the trees that they've logged and sold to the market around the world, and share those profits with people in Toronto and Chicago and New York. And very little of that benefit went to community. And then we ended up having to clean up after all of that, right? So in this case, it's a full holistic approach to investment. It's making sure that the resources that we garner in revenues and profits go back into the place. Through our planning, we can start to restore and revitalize those natural places in the territory so that future generations can enjoy them and benefit from this investment.
So the economic challenges right now around Canada and these new trade differences we have with our brother next door to us, how is this impacting your communities and Indigenous communities developing these economic development initiatives?
Beginning of the trade war, so how it's going to impact Tiicma?
It does impact. I mean, I can go back further. Like when COVID hit, the nation was developing its underground infrastructure, and the supply chain issues that we had impacted them in such a way. In fact, even the war between Russia and Ukraine, a lot of the supply, the metal and the pipes that they were using to upgrade their water and their sewer systems came from Ukraine. And they had to stop their development for 6 to 9 months because that had an impact. So people don't realize that those kinds of larger scale macroeconomics has an impact in remote communities, and no different with this trade war that's happening. We made an investment into forestry tenure. Nobody can predict what would happen 6 to 7 months later with the new election in the US and the kinds of policies that they're implementing and having an impact not only in Canada, but other parts of the world. We had no anticipation of that, and we weren't able to prepare for that. But that doesn't have an impact. Like, not only do we have to deal with the tariffs that they implement and they change on a regular basis, but we've got 30 to 35% duties on top of that as well. They're our biggest market as well. So given those challenges with our partners, it's difficult for us to get that product to market when we're faced with those kinds of challenges and issues. And we had not budgeted for that in our plans. We have a pretty conservative plan, but there was no way we can, pivot and respond to that as quickly. And therefore, we're diversifying and we're looking to new markets, and we're working with partners, and we're working with the government of Canada and our Mineral Treaty Society that supports all the Mineral Treaty Society members to build relations outside of the U.S. because we have no choice. And we're obviously looking at alternative ways to do business in the U.S. within other First Native American communities. Those are things we're exploring as well with other nations and utilizing law like the Jay Treaty, for example. As an example, it allows us to freely trade down south. And it's not something we practice, but we're looking at those kinds of initiatives. Other nations are exploring that right now. And we're definitely keeping an eye on those kinds of things to make sure if there's a corridor through that Jay Treaty, which is a treaty that the U.S. actually honors that Canada doesn't, and it gives us the opportunity to trade over the border fairly freely without any imposition, from the government. And it's been tested in the past. And my understanding, it was acceptable for a First Nation that can freely trade with a Native American community in the U.S. So those are things we're looking at to try and respond to some of these challenges that we're facing, but it is having an impact on us. More so than the larger corporation, because we don't have the capacity, we don't have the deep pockets and significant capital. So therefore, we're always trying to figure out how are we going to get through these turbulent times. And we don't know how long they're going to last, right? Because we're in the first 9 months of a new administration, and the impacts they've had in such a short time. We've got another little over 3 years. And so we've got to figure out a better way and broaden our markets and expand our markets so we can weather this storm. We'll continue to do business down there, of course. Once the smoke clears, we hope, if things get back to normal, we hope they do, and we'll certainly take advantage of it when that time comes.
Gary, you were talking about your partnership and government. Means I really want to a little bit elaborate at this point. I think this is a key for us to understand your challenge, is that what aspect of your business and partnership mostly directed, impacted, and what you're looking right now?
So we did it like a free trade mission to Australia and New Zealand recently as of the middle of August to the end of for 2 weeks. And we worked with Global Affairs Canada, the Mineral Treaty Society, and we went along with regional and national organizations like AFNBC and the BC AFN Center for Excellence that they established recently, National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association, Canadian Council for Indigenous Business, and the First Nation Forestry Council, the BC. We all went to Australia to participate in conferences over there and engage with business, engage with Indigenous business, Indigenous to Indigenous relation development, working with Global Affairs, as well as the trade commissioners in Australia and New Zealand. We engaged with industry folks, corporate Australia, corporate New Zealand, Indigenous corporate. And so this gave us building those relationships. That's where it starts, right? Establishing relationships, seeing where there's alignment. And a lot of what we've discovered is that the Pacifica and IPEC through IPECTA, Pacifica nations, we all share the same ocean, the Pacific Ocean. And one of the things that I heard was, which I agree with, is that we can shake hands with New Zealand folks through the ocean. If we both touch the water together, we are connecting through that Pacific Ocean. And those are the kind of ties we have. We have historic ties with them as well, from my understanding, from some of the historic teachings of our elders and our ancestors. We have long-term trading relations with them already, and we're just re-emerging in those spaces to start to redevelop and reacquaint ourselves with them so we can build a stronger trade relations around the world with Indigenous organizations that have aligned with our missions, visions, and values. Like we have the same principles and we have the same similar laws. We speak different languages, but in a lot of cases, we have more in common than we are different. And when we met with folks there, they were so excited to engage with us and they're looking forward to further engagement. And there's more to come, so stay tuned. We're going to see some business opportunities that you won't believe. We're thinking bigger and bolder, and yeah, we're going to move mountains as nation-to-nation trade becomes more common around the world.
As you're imparting or moving towards this new world of trade, when you look back to the community, how does the community respond to that? How does the community get involved? How do you get the community engaged in this and moving in this direction?
When we decided to go, we identified a couple of people to go. First of all, we had someone from the Monos Treaty Society who represent and supported, from a technical perspective, all the Monos Treaty nations, the other 4 Monos Treaty nations, to bring back what we learned and what we experienced. But we also had 2 members of the board who are also engaged in community so they can relay some of the messaging and some of what we learned and tell that story, and also relate to them that there are some opportunities that I think we should explore. And so it's about sharing our experience and knowledge and opportunities to ensure that they make decisions based on our experience. And we'll also bring back those and invite those folks we met with in New Zealand and Australia to the territory in hopes that they can come and see and get a perspective and a reference point for our territories as well, as something we look forward to in repaying their hospitality and sharing in our hospitality and showcasing the territory of the Kayuk-Cheklassit and what we have to offer, so they can have a reference point, right? And they can see for themselves what we're doing, what we're envisioning. And as we will definitely see more of these trade missions going forward. And a lot of the cases, Indigenous organizations, business communities have been brought on as an afterthought by government and industry. But in this case, now we're starting to lead these things. We're on the driver's seat in trade relations and trade missions. We're, again, thinking beyond the boundaries of our territories because we know we have a lot to share and a lot to offer and opportunities, and not only the monetary and typical metrics, but those non-monetary metrics that we can obviously impart to the world and hope that corporations and other governments can learn and glean from some of what we believe is moving in a different direction with respect to capitalism and more of an economic as opposed to an economics. And I like to use eco because I think it's important to think about the planet and to think about the natural capital and having this really balanced way, conservation-based economy development. And this is really in practice what our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. And we're just reviving, re-emerging again, bringing the principles back to make sure that, we can leave the planet a better place than we found it.
I have a question. When the trade war starts from early moment, what was your most difficult decision you had to make?
We're still pivoting and making them because when we purchased the tenure, it was no small investment. We have outstanding credit. We have a really good partner, but it's about trying to work with our partners to see where else we can move our product. And we're still exploring that. We're still moving forward. We're still being optimistic, but it is becoming a challenge. The cash flow is drying up. And the markets are getting softer, right? And so the margins that you once enjoyed in forestry, for example, are no longer there. And so therefore we have to plan for that. We have to pivot and make and adjust and adapt. And we haven't had to make difficult decisions, but it's having those conversations at our board level, at our governance level, at the community level to share that, these things are having an impact and we have to weather the storm and working with, within Tiicma, we're constantly having to review and consider and how do we get from, this month to the next month and into 6 months from now and working with our partners, right? And just communicating and always being truthful about, some of the impacts, because if people are telling you it's not impacting them, they're not being truthful because, we're seeing it happening at the large corporations. I just understand that Starbucks made a decision to close a number of stores recently as of today. They announced that. And so large corporations like that are doing these things. They're using what they've communicated is essentially trying to soften the blow in terms of saying that the trade wars is not impacting them. I have to disagree. I mean, I believe it actually has a lot to do with trade wars, and they're using other excuses. But again, for us, we are working with our partners. We're trying and working hard to make sure that those that are working for us can remain working. It's about the people. We have really good people, and I want to make sure that I do everything in my power and working with my board and working with our nation to ensure that those people remain whole in their roles and we're not having to make difficult decisions that most corporations would make, right? We're people-centric. And the people I have that work with me, I'm so proud of them, and I'm so thankful for what they do every day, despite the challenges we have. So yeah, it's not easy having, these difficult conversations about the impacts and the uncertainty that comes with that, right? And trying to manage for that, not only from our staffing to our community, our shareholders, but our suppliers and our partners all the way along the full kind of spectrum. And we've got a number of people who've been patient with us, and we're thankful for that. Yeah, it's certainly not easy, but we'll get through it. We'll weather the storm, and we'll look back and we'll learn from, these things, and how do we prepare for the next time this happens? Because it's not going to be the first time, and it won't be the last either.
Yes, in this difficult situation, I just want to see that how you see or choose the different directions between, for example, preserving community relationship or meeting institutional or funding deadlines or dealings, how you find a balance between them.
It's about communicating. It's about recognizing that, we are doing our level best to try and, obviously, live up to our commitments and honor those as best we can. And the other part of it is identifying folks to support us and accessing that capital that we wouldn't normally need otherwise, like whether they're grants, whether they're low-cost loans to interest only, structuring as a former banker, having dealt with clients in commercial and personal banking who've gone through some tough times, I understand that, these things happen and that are out of our control. And we're doing our level best as a client of banks. And we got a number of partners, and we're doing everything in our power to live up to those commitments. And those are the things in business that we all face, whether we're a big business or a small mom and pop. We all face these turbulent times, and it's like, how do you, pivot and adapt? And communication is key, internally and externally, to make sure people, look, we're doing our level best, and our team is on top of all of that. So.
Gary, you're shifting. All this shifting is happening. How is it impacting other Indigenous communities? What words of advice and direction are you giving to these and other Indigenous communities that are trying to do the same thing?
We have been quite focused internally. We know some nations are likely, and we don't interfere with others, but if others are interested in working with us or trying to understand what we've been doing and want to learn, we're open to that. And we work with our contractors and others, like those that either work with us directly or indirectly, to suppliers and others. And I think if we have a neighbor that's wanting to learn from what we're doing, we're happy to share. One of the things we're doing is nation-to-nation relations and trade. We're looking at opportunities together. Despite these challenges, we still are looking at opportunities. I'm still always, entrepreneurial and kind of trying to think about how can we create more opportunities to diversify our portfolio, so that, because the cyclical nature of forestry and the seasonal nature of hospitality and tourism, that is a challenge. And we got peaks and valleys, and they're usually wider and deeper. So how do we diversify our portfolio so that we have what I call sleep money, when you make money while you sleep kind of money, right? And so looking for those kinds of opportunity. What came out of those trade mission that we went on, there's significant opportunity there. I continue to pursue those and nurture those relationships, because something will be uncovered. But that's really, you just keep moving forward. You keep focusing on the vision, and you keep one foot in front of the other and working together to get through this. We're all in the community together. We're seeing some turbulence. There's some debris on the way. The tides are shifting, and we've got a bit of wake in front of us. But either we pull on the shore and we settle for a bit, or we take a new course, new direction, and we'll find our way back to the direction we're going. And as long as everybody in the canoe has an understanding of, and we're all in line when they're thinking, there shouldn't be a problem getting through it.
Gary, in this hard situation, are there risk of losing control over your innovation and compromising cultural integrity?
No, those are the cornerstones of what we do. Like those are foundational for us. Like it was, like the house of cards would fall, but they're really important. If you think about Mother Earth and the foundation that we stand on, as long as that foundation is stable and we're able to depend on those foundational pieces, we'll be fine. We'll get through this and decolonize a lot of this through focusing on those values, principles, laws, the vision. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easier. It's just more like we focus on that and we think about community. We think about the place, our customers that are aligned with the things that we value. As long as we maintain those and sustain those, we're going to be okay. We'll never compromise those values, principles, the laws, the integrity. They guide our integrity. They guide what we do and how we do business. We'll continue to move forward and eventually we'll be prosperous once again. And the Tiicma will be prosperous once again in their territory they once were before contact.
So, Gary, I've got one last question for you, and I think it comes back to Canadian government. And I think you kind of alluded to this before, but how does Canadian innovation policy shift to support Indigenous entrepreneurs better during this global economic uncertainty?
We're seeing some things in the media about the government in Canada using the national interest as a means to kind of ram through major projects. They've tried in the past, and it's always been unsuccessful given some of the challenges they have with title and rights and case law. I think if they just engage and continue to engage more with us, we would support. And as long as we're participants at the table and we're part of the solutions and part of the economic benefits of a project, I know Tiicma is a very progressive and they will support as long as you're engaged. And the other thing, they're doing some things like the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Fund that they announced, a $10 billion fund that they're implementing. They're the First Nations Bank of Canada working with the Business Development Bank of Canada and doing an equity loan program to support nations to participate by 51% or more of a company. Those kinds of things, corporations, private sector, public sector innovation is happening. I think we are taking lead and we're in the driver's seat, and it's like a for Indigenous by Indigenous model where we need to be a part of the conversation and the solutions and the policy development. There is room for improvement, but under the current government, they're making the effort. And I realize there's a lot of pressure. They're dealing with a number of things, and we are here to support anybody who's willing to allow us to participate in a real meaningful way.
That's awesome. That was great, Gary.
Yeah, Gary, it has been absolutely golden. This episode is amazing. We learned so much, my friend. How can our listeners learn more about Tiicma, you and your work? How can they connect with you?
There's certain things like, we've got Tiicma website. Have a look at our website, tiicma.com. TIICMA.com, and learn a little bit about us. Reach out. Our contact details are there. We're in Campbell River. If you happen to be coming through Campbell River, stop into our office. We welcome people who are interested in hearing our story. We're always participating in conferences. I'll be on the Indigenomics Now 2025 Virtual World Conference on October 6th. So if people can Google that and check it out and register and see what it is I will be sharing for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. We'll be engaging on that front. I'm always out and about, and email me, phone me, pick up the phone, reach out, happy to engage. And the other thing I'll say, and one of the challenges we face is capacity in the territory of supporting our businesses, because we have lack of power, we have lack of housing, and in a lot of cases we have to import people, and that's always our challenge. But we welcome people who might be interested in working with us that have alignment with our missions, vision, and values. And until such time we get our youth all trained up and ready to go, we invite people to come and work with our tourism operations, our forestry, our fisheries and aquaculture. Our focus is always going to be first and foremost our citizen, but where we can't hire them, we would like to hire those that are in academia who are graduating, who are coming out and wanting to learn about Indigenous ways of doing business. We'd be happy to welcome people and reach out. And watch us on LinkedIn. Tiicma Enterprises is on LinkedIn. We also have West Coast Expedition, Walters Cole is on Instagram, Facebook. Check out those organizations and follow us and like and just monitor our progress on there. And we'd be happy to engage either that way or in person or over the phone, by email.
That was great, Gary. Thank you very much. That was another episode of Innovation Fuel. Big ideas don't grow by themselves.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Share, and let's fuel the next one together.
Innovation Fuel is produced by JPod Creations. Find out more about the show at theinnovationfuel.ca.